Our final segment, we want to turn our attention to a new chapter in one of Florida's most politically charged investigations in recent history. A Leon County grand jury has convened around the Hope Florida Foundation, the program championed by First Lady Casey DeSantis. The probe centers on whether public funds meant to help families in need were misused for political purposes. Take a look. At the heart of the grand jury, how $10 million from a Medicaid settlement were funneled into the Hope Florida Foundation. The settlement money came from Centene, the largest Medicaid administrator in Florida, after it admitted overbilling taxpayers millions of dollars in prescription drugs. Witnesses subpoenaed by the grand jury include staff with ties to the administration of Governor Ron DeSantis. Right here on Florida This Week, former Senate President Tom Lee did not mince words on the need for transparency in this matter. Here's a portion of his remarks on the April 25th episode.
Look, this was illegal, and this is not a new problem. In 2005, we passed a law that made it illegal to take lawsuit settlement dollars outside the General Appropriation Act or through the Legislative Budget Commission. This money belonged to the taxpayers, plain and simple, and it should have gone back into the state coffers to be appropriated by the legislature, and it wasn't.
State Attorney Jack Campbell's office, which is overseeing the grand jury, is refusing comment as subpoenas go out. The funds in question were part of a $57 million total returning to our state and federal coffers. Instead, $10 million went to Hope Florida, which then passed it to two nonprofits, and from there went to a political committee opposing the 2024 constitutional amendment to legalize recreational marijuana. Earlier this year, State Representative Alex Andrade, leading the initial investigation under the House Healthcare Budget Subcommittee, alleged the transfers could constitute money laundering and wire fraud. Andrade ultimately withdrew, citing legal limitations of the subcommittee, and he referred the matter to prosecutors. For now, the Hope Florida Foundation continues to operate. Grand jury proceedings may determine whether criminal charges will follow and whether key figures in state government will be brought in to testify. As a senior reporter for Florida Phoenix, Mitch has been covering all of these developments since April. Mitch, there is a long list of folks who could be subpoenaed. When you're tracking all of this, where are you looking?
Well, we know so far through reporting from the Tampa Bay Times, we just had a couple of people we know this week. One of them that has testified, or at least gone into the courtroom, is a member of the Save Our Society for Drugs, is the name of the group. One of the groups, the two nonprofit groups that received, I believe, $5 million in this case, this one group did. And so that is the question, right? They got this money, that and this other group that was affiliated with the Florida Chamber of Commerce, and within a very short amount of time, diverted that, almost all of the money they got to Keep Florida Clean, I believe was the name of the PAC, political affiliation committee that was led by James Uthmeyer, who is currently our Attorney General. At the time, he was Ron DeSantis' Chief of Staff. And he was leading that effort, as you noted in the setup here. So in terms of big names, I mean, Uthmeyer is the biggest name that I could see possibly, being part of this. And he seems to be the one with the biggest risk as we look at all this because of what has been previously reported in terms of having contact with that group, Save Our Society for Drugs, in terms of like have this thing happen here, and that money moving around so quickly.
And this settlement is something that is not new. This is a settlement that the state of Florida had been in negotiations with Centene since 2021. That's right. Centene was also in negotiations with other states.
20 other states,
after they had admitted to overbilling taxpayers for prescription drugs. And so it's interesting to see all the layers that came to the surface, came to the public's attention during this legislative session.
Yeah, and it kind of came up before the Centene announcement came, or maybe the money came through, was reporters were looking at, because Hope Florida, I think, was officially put in the governor's office in 2023,
yes,
and they had to go ahead and
2023.
get legislative approval. And so part of that, and actually anybody could have seen that when there was actually a bill, legislative bill, I believe Danny Burgess from this area was sponsoring it in the Senate, and it reported in the analysis that that it hadn't completed some of its tax returns, basically, tax forms,
Right.
and like, what's up with that? And so people were asking that's when the, kind of the snooping began about what's going on with Hope Florida, and then you learn about this, the return of the $67 million, and then the money, had to go over here to Hope Florida, who never really received that much money in the past or done that much with it, and then all of a sudden they just move it over. It just is unusual, and on the surface of it, it raised a lot of questions. And then, of course, you mentioned Alex Andrade, who had the committee there,
yes.
and you had friction, as everybody knows, in this legislative session for the first time really since Ron DeSantis has been governor, and this has been obviously the biggest one
From members of his
the Republican
own
Party, right?
Yes.
Because the Democrats have been critical for 6 years; it hasn't gotten anywhere. It's
Right.
Republican versus Republicans here, and so Andrade's committee did a lot, looked into as much as he could do. He tried to subpoena some folks who didn't show up, and then, like you said, late April, it's like, okay, it's all over now, and it's like, is that all there is here? And nobody really knew. And would Jack Campbell pick this up, or a federal investigator
Right.
pick it up?
And the comments from fellow Republicans have been really stunning. Alex Andrade said when he announced that he was dropping the issue, he said that he would leave the rest to, quote, the FBI and the Department of Justice. We just played the clip by Tom Lee, who was the Senate president from 2004 to 2006, and he also had strong words. Who are some of the other players that we might hear from in this, you think?
Well, I don't know, but we should say, Casey DeSantis, right? This was her baby, and there was a lot of talk that maybe she was. We talked about in the show about maybe her potential candidacy as a governor, to succeed Ron DeSantis, and that's probably not going to happen. I don't know if it would ever really have happened, but this obviously, on a political front, has really just doomed that candidacy, I would dare say. Even though in polls consistently, even now, she does very well compared to Byron Donalds because of the name factor. She's well known. The governor has been super critical. He has said this is a political witch hunt that nobody would have cared about, except that Casey was involved with it.
He's pointed to the timing of
her and he has
rise.
also said that, like, this is, I believe he said 33,000 people this has helped, got off the government rolls, and it saved the state $100 million. He's thrown those numbers out there. They haven't really been verified like that. But yes, again, the tension between Republicans in Tallahassee was really pronounced by this. The governor hasn't really talked about, I don't think since he's been the grand juries began the last week, anybody's really asked him about this. He gets very upset about when people talk about it, and it's happening though. We do know Jack Campbell. I mean, he doesn't necessarily have to come up. Maybe the grand jury doesn't come up with anything at the end of the day. That usually doesn't happen.